our next chunk of the program features some early New England style harmony. You may remember, Pilgrim Voyage, coming over on those ships and settling the West and going out and creating your destiny and finding a plot of land. So there's a lot of people who were needed on that journey. You needed doctors. You definitely needed doctors. You needed carpenters who could help you build the houses, and you needed farmers who could plant and know when to rotate the crops, how to raise them. You didn't need choir directors. It wasn't really important. It wasn't a top priority for the settlers to get a ton of choir directors, so that singing wasn't always the most beautiful, the most well-trained, the most in the classical tradition. It's much more in a conversational, almost spoken style, more of an amateur style back then. And you can see that through line in American music, that early style carried through into jazz, into barbershop, into musical theater, even into modern pop and rap music, where you hear a lot more of that kind of twang country music, especially. You hear a lot of that twang in there, and that's a more intrinsically American style. So what you're going to be used to hearing with this melody, Mary, can I get an A major? What you're used to hearing is, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. With that big open floaty space inside. That's that wonderful Western classical European tradition coming in there. But the early American settlers didn't have that. So what you had in their tradition was, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. I don't do that to parody the style. I'm trying to be as authentic as possible. It's just a very different style than you're used to hearing in a choir or a classical singer. But if you get the chance to pursue it, a sacred harp sing is what they call it, a sacred harp sing or a shape note sing. These are fantastic events. They're really wonderful and beautiful, and they often happen at folk festivals. You have this big old field and giant barn out in the middle of it. At 6 a.m. you'll wake up with the dawn, and there'll be 300 people just going, amazing grace. You're gonna hear it ringing for miles because there's so much bite and buzz and ring in that sound. It carries everywhere. So I want you to hear that style and then hear how it carries through. I'm gonna have the choir sing that melody for you one more time, and then you're going to sing along with them. Notice that this melody is a little different than you may remember from Amazing Grace. The second half is where it changes a little bit. Saved a wretch like me, I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. The rest of it's the same. But that little turnaround in the middle is a little tricky. So listen for that this time. The choir will sing it for you. You will sing it with the choir, and then the choir will sing it in 4-part harmony in the traditional sacred harp style. The sacred harp is a hymnal that contains all of these old songs in this style, and they are written in a shape note style. If you don't know how to read music, that's okay. You probably know that notes in music are little circles with lines on them. If you know that much, you know enough to understand shape notes, because shape notes just have different shapes on the notes. That's why we call them shape notes. Because instead of just circles, you also get rectangles and triangles depending on where it is in the scale. Because again, early American settlers, they didn't have a lot of training in music. They didn't have a lot of music teachers with them, so they wanted to make it easier to understand the music. So they tried this system of changing the shapes of the notes to make it easier to read. Some people found that easier. Most people didn't, so they stopped doing it after a while. But they're really interesting to check out when you get a chance. So what I would love for you to do is listen to the choir, sing with the choir, and then listen to the choir again as they sing in that open, old-fashioned New England style. We'll then move into a setting of Chester, a really, really fun tune, one of my favorites, and I've had composer Christian Giddings, who has composed for us several times before. I had him set a modern setting of this that keeps that old-fashioned New England harmony while adding a few flourishes of modern-style harmony. So you'll get to hear an authentic shape note version with Amazing Grace. The tune is actually called New Britain, but that is the tune for Amazing Grace, and then moving into Chester. Before we sing Amazing Grace together, I do want to tell you about the origin of that text, because I'm sure most of you have known this song your whole life. There was a man went on to become a clergyman, but in his early life did not have a strong religious center. He was serving in the Navy, and then after he got out of the Navy, he got involved in the slave trade and was on a ship off the coast of Ireland when a storm bore down on them. They thought for sure they would die. And for the first time in his life, he got down on his knees and asked for salvation from God. And the clouds parted, and the storm passed over. And the nice version of the story is that from that day forward, he dedicated himself to the Lord's message and went out to preach. And what actually happened was he spent a few more years in the slave trade, and then he got around to having his full religious conversion, and then wrote the text to Amazing Grace, based on that experience of almost losing his life at sea. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. So as you sing, think of those little moments, those storms in your life. Maybe not so bad as being on an African slave trading ship off the coast of Ireland while a storm tries to crash on you. But we all have moments of difficulty in our lives. Combat, war, conflict with family members, financial troubles, career. We have those difficulties. And if God can find salvation for a wretch like him, he can find it for a wretch like me and a wretch like you. So please join us in singing Amazing Grace. Choir, go ahead and stand. You can open up to Amazing Grace. The choir will sing for you once, you will sing with the choir, and then the choir will sing in 4-part harmony. Give me that nice, strong, yeah kind of sound. Try to get into that old-fashioned sound. The choir will model it for you. Amen.